Om 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 Ganganavate Namaha Om Gangurabhyo Namaha Om Aim Saraswatyay Namaha Om Ganana Antvanam Om Ganana Antva Ganapatigam Havamahe Kavim Kavinam Upamashravashtamam Jeshtarajam Brahmanam Brahmanaspata Anashranvanuti Visida Sadhanam Om Shri Mahaganapataye Namaha. Om Shivaya, good evening, everyone. This is our Tuesday satsang. So I thought maybe instead of doing it every Tuesday, as to give you a break and give myself a little break from having taught literally every day, almost from the time of the lockdown here. And so it's almost 3 months now. So we're taking it a little easy, but nevertheless, as happy and as positive as we can go into these modern times. I know that I've called the Satsanga Good News a 707, and I want to say that each one of you who is a part of this Satsanga is also the carrier of good news. Okay, of course, if you're tuning into just the general vibration, which is the media and everything, you may feel very desperate and hopeless. But I would remind you that this is all for good, and we have to learn to build our life from inside out and not necessarily expect anybody to do it for us. I think this is one of the biggest issues of people is they always believe that the conditions and specifically the causes of their life, of their growth, of their fall is external. No, we are like the plants. We have the seeds in the soil, and these are our thoughts, our actions, our feelings, our attitudes, our um, belief systems and everything. And what we grow into, that's what we're going to become. Naturally, we also share some karma and some reality with other people, but we can always make an effort to live what we call a Satya Yuga, which is the obviously the highest vibration that has ever existed as one obviously time or period of time in every cycle of time, but nevertheless, the Satya Yuga means living with your best potential and manifesting your best potential. I think we have to remind ourselves on it. What I would like to do is ask you whether you feel competent or not, is to actually organize your own satsang with other people, with anybody who is kind of willing to process this obviously crisis in a more positive way and not feel that you're not adequate enough, you're not being a teacher, or you're not a sannyasi, or you're not this and that. Everybody has a power of satsanga, because satsanga means the power of truth. It means the company of truth. The company of something which is called the truth is also its power. So we all have that capacity to share the uplifting ideas with others. Perhaps if the people around you start to complain or start to panic, you give them a hug, you say, don't worry about anything, everything will be better. And you have to be a good psychologist. You have to use your best psychology principles, and that is to be very encouraging. And without encouragement, no human being can live, because by the very nature of life that we're part of, we're going to be running into certain crises and difficulties and everything. But spiritually speaking, we have to understand that every crisis is a crisis when the avatar manifests. So the idea of an avatar is when the Lord manifests, and in every moment of crisis in our life, there's always an opportunity to rise beyond and above. Even if you have to spend some time in that particular state, the avatara, that the descending Lord is there. The concept of avatara is not just limited to some obviously cycles of time, which they are, but they're not limited. They appear in those cycles of time. So think about this, that every every crisis brings on some profound change, but the truth is that we cannot change the society now without really asking every one of us to change whatever we need to change. Now, to change something, you cannot just force it. First, you need to know yourself well. And by the very knowing yourself, by the very cultivation of awareness of oneself, one can already induce some form of a change. And I think unless we ask each other to educate ourselves about our own ways and our own thinking that may be wrong, we cannot expect the society to be any different. Why? Because the society is made up of people like you and me and everybody else. So, changing the whole means changing a part. And since there are so many parts, the evolution is always slow, but it is steady and it's definitive and it's assured. Whereas a revolution never lasts, it's just a spike and it goes like that. So take this wonderful time, I would say wonderful time in spite of a lot of suffering that there is there, to contemplate your higher purpose in life, to think, okay, so, obviously the so-called reality is unstable by nature. He may be blown out of our sight in no time. But then how do we approach anything and everything? The reality of everything will go and change in some ways or the other, including the reality of our own bodies. We cannot hold on to anything. Since we cannot hold on to anything, can we have some philosophy of what I may call today a good news? My favorite song, or some of you love, your song, my song, there is a bright side somewhere, and you will not find it anywhere but in your heart. Okay. You may look in your neighbor's heart, maybe there, maybe not, but it's in your heart. It's in my heart and everybody's heart. And you have to have lived a long life, and you have to have had or received a few kicks in your life to understand that you are the builder of your life. This is the important philosophy, and I believe in it 100%. So therefore, the second book that I wrote, and the book that I actually use for my own inspiration, is called Empower Your Life. I find it fundamentally important to uh, live by this principle. Empower your own life and don't wait for anybody else to empower it for you. This is much more difficult than it sounds, right? Because of all the conditioning, all the sorrowful feelings that we have for ourselves. There are days sometimes you just want to give yourself a hug, and I say, do it, you know. But sometimes it's like that we, in spite of our best efforts that we make, somehow, without the proper satsanga, without some company of spiritually minded people, we remind each other of the purpose of our life. It's hard to keep the vibration high up. We need to have a regular sadhana. We have to cultivate our faith in God. Please don't think of it in any kind of, pragmatic, well, it's purely pragmatic, but it's not any kind of orthodox religious sense. The power of human mind is limited. We know that in a sense. The power of human mind to change itself is limited. So we need an exposure to higher vibration, higher light altitudes and things like that in order to really, really help ourselves change ourselves. But the problem, as I said, is that the belief system, the conditioning, we have been victimized by many people, by the time we live in, by the city where we live in, name it. It is just way too thick, and it needs to be pierced by a lot of steady work of building your hope and your practice and everything. For that, you need the structure. So it is not that none of us has no this capacity. We all have a capacity to become anything we want. We can become like Jesus. We can become like Buddha. But what happens is that this thickness of this old belief systems and stubborn belief systems where somebody insulted us, somebody told us bad things. We're hearing the voices of this past conditioning so frequently in our mind that we need healing naturally. And a part of this healing is to start cooperating with these belief systems that pull you down, that make you feel like, okay, I'm a victim of this person, that thing. You can feel a victim even when you're going to live in the midst of the ashram. It's a condition that you take with you, and everybody is like that. A lot of the places you go to whether monasteries, ashrams, and everything, are made of people like you, me, and everybody else. Which mean the people with great potential and yet also some pretty stubborn old habits of thinking and everything like that. So I want to encourage you to take this opportunity to really be the best human being you can. Perhaps you have tried it, now try it again. If you fail, you do it again. You fail, you do it again. This is the secret of spiritual life. It is not whether you will fail. You will definitely will fail. The point is, can you stand up again? Can you rise again? And that is the good news we need today. Okay, it's obviously human nature is fallible. There's no doubt about this. You know, there are people who, each one of us who thought we've reached certain heights and everything, and then we failed and we dropped and we broke our legs and whatever it is, and then the whole idea is rise again. When you keep on rising again, then the question of failing doesn't come in anymore, because it's only a question of keeping your just the right momentum. And as I said, you need the structure. And my very favorite combo, as I've said many times, is to keep your spiritual diary, and please keep some form of self-analysis, which you can use in the written form, or you can just daily take like an an objective look at the way you thought, the way you acted, the way you put that food into your mouth, the way, like all these things that are very much part of our subconscious nature, and we're not able to catch ourselves properly, or we're not able to use our discrimination to deal with this. I have to remind you that a lot of our lower nature, I mean, lower, not that it's we're bad people or anything, but we all have it. It's a part of the instinctive nature we brought from many incarnations into this lifetime. So our sometimes desire to destroy somebody, or pull somebody down, or there's lust, there's anger, there's jealousy, there's all these things. All that is part of the lower nature. The lower nature does not always and very and steadily respond to the intellectual analysis, or discriminative process as such. When many people know everything about something and they can't stop doing it. So similarly, this reminds me of Duryodhana's in Mahabharata, when he says, when he's talking to Lord Krishna, he says, I know what is right and I can't do it. And I know what is not right and I cannot stop doing it. And I feel like there is some kind of a force within me that is making me like act like that. And of course, that force is what we call the force of vasana, subconscious desire, or something like this, so samskaras. So nevertheless, this is what we need to do. Please remember, this is Good News 707, I call it, New York Times. Like, I feel like I'm really in some kind of a studio or whatever it is. The good news means, yes, there will be many inspirational things, but the important thing is that we want to be able to um, have a structure. And without the structure, we cannot continue. And that structure should not be overly rigid, but it should be a structure that is relatively comfortable with you. Let's say you don't meditate much in a week, then I would not expect you to meditate 30 minutes a day. That would be too much. So you start with 3 minutes every day, 3 minutes, 3 minutes, 3 minutes, 3 minutes, like that. Then if you succeed at that, then 4 minutes. Now, of course, you may say, well, how am I going to count my meditation time? I'm just saying this because this is what we want to be able to do. Structure, structure, structure. Why? Because most of us do not have a living teacher next to us. So when you don't have a living teacher, you also don't have a proper sense of accountability, right? Suppose if I know I'm watched by somebody, somebody is, there for me, I can go to that person, ask a question and ask, what else do I do? Or I'm simply in the presence of that person is highly inspirational, Then if you don't have a person like that, and most people don't, then what you need to do is you have to be your own teacher until the time you meet the right teacher. So the guru in you is your higher mind, your happy mind, your inspirational mind, your selfless mind, the mind that says good news today. You know, I failed yesterday about 50 times, but today is a good news. That's the mind you want to have. And in order to support that mind, remain active in your life and helping you to deepen your discrimination, you do need a structure. So your spiritual teacher, your guru, becomes your diary. Please don't misunderstand this. This is Shivananda Swami's teaching. He was very keen on everyone keeping the spiritual diary. And he says the higher you go, the more need to keep the diary. So if he said that, you got to believe it. It's like Jesus was saying the same thing, right? So I encourage you to please keep a diary every day. And if you need any help with that, you're welcome to write to me. I'm a little slow responding to emails. That's okay. You just have to believe it, that the positive news will come and I will respond. I have to tell you this. I'm not the best at this. I kind of get overwhelmed by technology and then I just go and meditate. This is the best thing. But the idea is that you're welcome to contact me. I will personally set it up for you, your diary on the basis of what you want. And then if you like, I can be the accountable person. Not that I will have some kind of a gun in my hand. So if you made a mistake in the French fries yesterday, like then there comes me, Swami Sadasivananda, and he's going to boom. No, the idea is that you can have French fries, but yeah, it would be good if I know it. Or if you like, have somebody who is a good friend of yours. They can be a person that you can kind of have a little accountability. Let's say you decided to not eat sweets for 1 week. So you can, you know, say this to a person that you would love to share some kind of inspiration like this with, and you will find it's a much easier way to travel. And if that person also has something to share with you, even better. If you're couples, even better. Of course, most couples are totally like two different people, two different worlds, but there may be some couple there that it looks like, oh my God, okay, maybe you will be willing to, stop watching TV like for once a week, and I will be willing to speak to you nicely for 1 week. Like this, you can make some deal. Anyway, I sometimes make a little fun, but I actually do encourage you. So now I want to mention to you something about the thoughts, because everything is thoughts, right? And Swami Shivananda says, thought is the ancestor of action, of all action, meaning that the thought is the ancestor of the reality we create and we live. Now, the reality, of course, that we live today is the result of the thoughts we had in the past lifetimes specifically, and also some of this lifetime. But the greatest movement within us, it comes from previous lifetimes, which are really inaccessible to us. And I do not ask you to ever even try to go there. There's a reason why we're not supposed to go there. But if you will get insights, or you can use some inference to know how things are built up in your life and became a part of your personality. Remember your strengths and your weaknesses too. Okay, so now if you want to improve your life, Swami Shivananda says, what do you have to do? Well, very simply, he gives an answer. He says, you have to purify your thoughts. I always say this, I learned it hard way, but I have to say that the purity is the foundation of spiritual life. Everybody wants to open their chakras, get the kundalini going, want to astrally travel to other places, want to, it's wonderful. But if you don't have a sufficient purity, you will have a very difficult time. So doing this exercise or going into any kind of that reality, we do not have even sufficient purity to even move through the street safely without criticizing one person, without being attracted by something like that. So remember, the purity is the first condition in developing the power of your mind. And when I say purity, you will be dealing with impurity for sure. But at the same time, this could be one of your ideals to try to purify your thoughts. You can say like this: I have a thought of this like this. I call that person by some name. Now I can purify that. I dislike the behavior, or that's what this person did, but I don't need to call it this person that name. So this is a small effort in purifying. And there are other techniques. For example, we have Pratipaksha Bhavana in Raja Yoga Sutras, which means the replacement of replacement of certain thoughts with the opposites, meaning the negative thoughts with the positive, and like that. That's a technique in itself. Now, um, have you ever deeply thought, really, for yourself, like how is our life built? Obviously, we receive the influences from people. We are educated in some ways from by parents, by whoever else, teachers, people that we meet. But where our strengths and weaknesses come from? Now we can say like this, that our life is built from within out. This is a simple statement, and yet it's beautiful. So our heart, you can say, or subconscious mind or unconscious mind, whichever way you like it, is the repository, or the magazine of the deepest thoughts and beliefs. And that those deepest thoughts and beliefs keep fashioning our circumstances and the external life according to their quality. So give your attention from now onwards to building your purest, the most powerful, best and choicest thoughts. And let them be strung on the rosary of your life moment by moment. Like a song like this. Your life should be a song. It should be a poem. You know, we say this many times. Many people like to read, songs and poems, and they like to read the books and the stories and the fairy tales. Let your life be that. It can be done. And the means of building all that is through the power of our thoughts. Now, do remember one important thing, and that is that our thoughts depend on several qualities. I always remind you this. One, I always say, level of purity. If you want your thoughts to become powerful, this is the way to do it. The second one, it depends on the degree of concentration. So to have a dissipated mind doesn't help, because you cannot generate a powerful thought. Let's say we live a dissipated lives. Our mind is all over the place. We're reading too many books, listening too much to music, we're too much on internet and doing different things. Then our power thought diminishes. Too many projects, any kind of a spreading out of our mental power refuses and diffuses these power thoughts. So what we need to do is to kind of get the focus, slowly. So you have first purity, then you have a higher degree of concentration. Then something that really powers the thought is the power emotion or intensity of emotion. Like when you think something, it's okay. Let's say I want to pray for somebody, right? But I don't know the person, and uh, I do focus my mind, but it's not. I feel like it's not as powerful as if it was somebody very close to me that I really know. Like say, you know, one of you wants to achieve something or is healing from something. So then, since I know you, there's an emotion that is embedded in that thought. So it's not pure thought. It's really more like of a will or desire for you to be better or for me to be better, like this. So what happens is that we call this the intensity of emotion. And then, of course, we have the last one, which is called the quality of intention. So the quality of intention charges the thought, and just like an emotion, they're sometimes a little similar, but there is a distinction. So with this, we start our little journey into the power of thought. But today, I wanted to tell you something which is in that little book that you have, hopefully some of you, Empower Your Life. There's a whole section on understanding the purpose of life. Now, the purpose of life is something you want to concentrate on, feel it, think about this every day. You know, it's not like I decided to that my purpose of life was, you know, when I began my spiritual life, and now I'm on the spiritual path and everything is wonderful. No, we need to think of our purpose of our life every single day. Number one, what is your purpose of life? I'll leave this to you. In a few minutes we can discuss it. You see, Swami Shivananda says our foremost duty in this lifetime is not what people think. It is to realize the self. To find God is our ultimate duty, right? And without this duty, all our duties become a form of slavery, form of attachment. It is something that we naturally concentrate on, thinking it is our duty. Yes, I'm not saying that people are doing wrong things, taking care of their families and this and that. But in order to do things well, in order to do them without overly emotionally charged, you know, to be able to hold some grounds of stability in your life, to have some equanimity, it is quite essential that you have a spiritual ideal. And that will be, let's say in this case, self-realization. And then what will happen is that with sadhana, purpose of course brings in the practice. So sadhana means the practice. So with the practice, you build a foundation for each day. Now, you may fail in each day many times, but you must have your spiritual foundation. Therefore, without the spiritual practice, all these talks are just kind of, you know, emotional excitements or whatever they may be. So what happens is when you focus on one duty, the foremost duty, which is self-realization, then all our worries, all our anxieties, you know, will slowly dissipate, and we'll start to feel more and more of the inner bliss or inner happiness, and not just sometimes, under all conditions, and not just in a certain environment when we have what we like, or when we're surrounded by people we love, but we will be able to sustain this in all kinds of environments. This is the teaching of Swami Shivananda. It's a very beautiful advice that he gives us. So all our duties become secondary, and I think we need to remember that. So for finding the purpose in life, here is what I would suggest. You spend some time every morning and you think of what is the central purpose. I'm using deliberately the word central, not just the purpose of life. The reason being is that the central purpose is that which links all your other activities, the way your mind is thinking, and everything to that central purpose. This is why it is so important that we think of it frequently, right? Let's say you get upset, then you say, okay, you know, you can naturally spend some time processing that, feeling upset or whatever. Then you can ask yourself, oh my God, is this really necessary? I mean, could I have handled this differently? Is it really linked to my central purpose in a proper way? And you will obviously find out that it isn't. So clearly, Swami Shivananda says, understand the purpose of life and then nicely write out the line of a work or practices that is the most congenial to you, and then you start to live up to your ideal. Now, this is the story of about purpose as well as the ideal. Here are some questions that at least I ask myself, and I know they're not maybe the deepest, but they're good enough to start you on this journey. If I had more free time, what would I do? Let's say now coronavirus has ended. Of course, you have more time now with coronavirus than you had with anything else. But let's say coronavirus has ended. I have enough of money. I have everything I need. I have a place to sleep. I have some friendship. I have this and that. I have a yoga center, whatever it is. So what if I now was given this free time, how would I utilize it? Would I be able to utilize it? Also, that's a different question. If I had plenty of wealth, and resources, how would I use it? Would I distribute it with others or would I keep it to myself? Like, these are simple questions. Then sometimes your purpose get a little bit ignited when you go to a funeral of a friend of somebody who is dear to you, and then you think, okay, what kind of thoughts and feelings are in my heart? What voice am I hearing? Do I hear that voice? Does it make me want to change my way of living or eating or something like this? These are wonderful things to do. If you don't have these thoughts as somebody is passed on, you may think of the times now that we live in that could provide plenty of opportunities for deep contemplation. And of course, our life will eventually come to an end, and it gets shorter and shorter and shorter. So if I had only a certain amount of time to live, how would I love to spend that time? You see, if you don't contemplate these things, then when the time to leave comes, the mind gets thrown into a state of panic. And I don't want to tell you anything more about this because this is ultimately the good news program. So I'm going to leave it out there just for you to contemplate. Okay, so if you ask this kind of question nicely, deeply, you will reawaken, I would say, some form of a distant memory in you, your connection with your past lifetimes, your spirituality from your past lifetimes. We all have done yoga and different practices in our previous lifetimes. Some people more, some people less, some people more consistently, some people had lots of interruptions, obstructing karmas. But the good news, again, 707, is that you're reconnecting with your past samskaras or impressions, and that connection is done by also by it's ignited by asking the question, right? Just for a few minutes every day. Stop everything. Go into your room. We're afraid to stop what we're doing most of the time, right? If we're cooking, we think we're going to burn the dishes. If we are working, we think if I stop, I'm going to lose the momentum. I'm not going to be. Everything in our life is more important than spending time a little in silence, spending time a little reflection and meditation and everything. So because of our set of priorities being upside down, we're not making the progress that we would like to. But once you realize that that is the priority is first my central purpose, my goal in life, self-realization, even if I have no clue what it may mean, nevertheless, that's what you do. So every day. So then what we do, and speak about this many times, is try to learn to link your activities to your central purpose. And this, you do it before you actually do these activities. For example, I'm going to cook some food. Am I looking for some, you know, cuts here, quick cuts, and I'm looking for some, like, just anything to put into my mouth? Or am I eating something that is deliberately chosen to build my body and my mind that can help my central purpose? Let's say you eat well, but then the question is, why do you eat well? Then the answer will be because I want to be healthy. Next question, why do you want to be healthy? So that will link you to something further, hopefully, and you have to start to learn to connect everything you think, everything you say, and you do to your central purpose. And think of them, when I say linking, meaning that I'm using these particular types of actions as direct links to that, meaning that with this particular, as means of attaining, with these particular thoughts, actions, and everything, I will attain that self-realization. These actions, thoughts, and feelings are the direct means to the realization of this. So this purpose, so-called central purpose, needs to be redefined, needs to be reinstated almost every hour until you're firmly convinced this is what I'm doing, this is what I've been born for. I may not even remember what I was born for, but I'm certainly not born to worry all day long, to read the news all day long and all this. There's nothing wrong in doing these things to some degree, but not as my final goal. Then there's something that I would like to add to this purpose, which is we want to grow into a greater sense of selflessness, because without selflessness, this other guy, the self, will be very strong. And selflessness is part of the purpose of life. The reason why we come together into this life is to be able to give of our each other to each other, right? Of ourselves to one another. So for that, selflessness is the key word. This is why in many ashrams and places like this, when people live, selflessness is the core principle of activity, right? So it's just something that if I spend all day long thinking about myself, even if I want to eat the best food, and if I want to, exercise all day long, and I'm all proper by the the Bible of what I'm recommending, the rules and everything, I'm still caught in this sense of the self or I. So each week we must learn to give of our time. Each week we have to think, how can I help that person? I make that phone call. I write them in a lovely email. Or it's best to obviously directly contact the people, but this is a good way. Or do some selfless service. Go and do something for other people, for organizations like that. Every month, a small portion of our income should be given to deserving people, deserving organizations like that. And I'm sure some of you do it, so I don't want to be a preacher here, but this is how it goes. So the spiritual definition of life, the spiritual purpose of life obliges us to contribute to the well-being and happiness of others. And in short, that means to become selfless. It is only the selfless living that can embody the highest purpose of life. You can't have self-realization and then have kind of a, you know, sorry to say this, but like an Instagram kind of a life where, you know, a little sweet little bikini looking things showing how spiritual they are and everything. It's wonderful, but we want to see these people, hopefully in the next phase of the development, serving somebody, a homeless person, cooking a meal for somebody like that. So because the majority of people think that the fulfillment of their personal desires is the primary objective, right, in their lives. However, the exclusive focus on fulfillment of one's own desires necessarily limits our energies, our capacities, our potential, our powers. So when we widen the scope of our actions, so as to include others, our vision expands on one level, and we naturally find a greater influx of energy in our life, and we start to feel much stronger, much better. And we feel also support from other friends, from people, especially from spiritual, hopefully, friends. And we also feel from the higher beings. So this is the beauty of making one's own life selfless. Now you're thinking of the purpose. When you have a purpose, you will find that your energies will be better organized. Your sense of timing will be better organized. There will be more positive thoughts in our life. So we won't suffer so much from the bouts of depression and everything, which is typical for everybody more or less nowadays. But this will help us a lot. Now, here's the question for you. And I would like you to write it down. I would like you to think about this. Why is it important to have a definite idea or a precise plan in life? Or let's say an ideal. And you have to think about this. Teacher says, a person who gives talk says something like this. Now we have to see why. The reason being is that our behavior, our acting, obeys certain laws. We may call them the laws of physics or laws of some kind of a psychic chemistry, some laws of psychic attraction. I'm not talking about people, I'm talking about energies. So let's say you're deciding to either build a house or you want to go to travel someplace, let's say to Florida. Now many people are traveling to Florida. Just to add something quite funny, not funny, but 70% of people apparently in New York City today itself are thinking how they're going to leave the city soon, meaning not to live here anymore. So where will I go? I don't know. Maybe Long Island for now, maybe somewhere else, but you cannot run away from yourself. But this is what's happening with this crisis, you know. People selling apartments. So if you want to move to New York City, this is a good time. A little advertisement. I am sure everybody is racing. That's good. So basically, if you're building a house or you're going traveling, what happens is once you make up some plan, you have to leave to one side many things that are not directly relevant to the fulfillment of that plan. And in order to concentrate on your house and your journey, it happens automatically, right? If I have to go traveling, I start to organize my mind in a certain way. And I'm not going to think, okay, I got to do my nails or do something like that. Nothing like that. You have done this already. You're traveling tomorrow morning. So once you have a precise plan, what happens? You establish some connections, right? Or we could say a connection with things, places, people, entities of any kinds and forces that correspond to it, to that plan. Meaning, you know, let's say if I have a plan to play music, then I start to meet people who play music or who want to teach me music. I go to places physically like that. And I'm not going to discuss the entities, but this is what it is. So everything seems to fall into place and in and around you so that you're able to realize that idea. See, the most important thing, please underline this. If you hear something that inspires you, thank God. That means something came through this person. If not, you know, I have to do some tapas and stand on one leg for 15 minutes or something like that to purify. So the most important thing is you must give yourself precise objectives in the spiritual life too, not just externally. You know, today I'm going shopping, I'm going to Staples, I'm going, okay, very good, you mastered. But what about your inner life? Why do we think that the external life, in fact, is so much more important, that the organization of our mental currents is not so important? We think, oh, yeah, I know my mind. You do not know your mind. And that's the whole reason why you suffer so much in your life, is because you actually, by believing that you know your mind, you still don't know it. Because there's so many little corners in this mind, so many little things. Even if, with our best intentions, this mind finds some way to ruin you for the day, for an hour, for a minute, like this. So give yourself some precise objectives in your day, what you're trying to accomplish. I will be fearless from 12 to 2. From 2 to 4, I'm going to continue to develop or cultivate, let's say, kindness. From 4 to 6, like this. So this is called the vow rotation exercise. It's a very effective thing. So what happens is that when you give yourself also objectives, you do that in order to avoid all sorts of extraneous elements coming to distract you. See, if I know I have to do a certain amount of practice in my day, even though I love watching tennis sometimes, don't tell anyone. But you know, it's amazing. I can't watch my tennis until I finish my practices. And if I do watch my tennis without finishing my practice, I feel really bad. Especially if I am a teacher and I have to tell people to do the same and I can't do it. You see, so in a way, this is how it works. Even by very teaching, you're actually encouraged, not to say force, that's not the right word, but you encourage to improve yourself. This is why the purpose of a satsanga is that when you please give it to other people, it could be one person or two people, and put your dog and a cat next to it, will be a nice group. So what happens is that whatever you share with them, they share with you. You're going to say, oh my God, I want to really do that. I'm going to be feeling so inspired. Take advantage of this Zoom experience, you know, even though we're all zoomed out, to actually create some form of satsanga with other people, right? So anyway, if you give yourself precise objectives, you will find you will not be like that person who is in a hurry to get somewhere, to do some work, but is continuously allows himself or herself to be continuously diverted from the route, so that they end up, instead of going to, you know, on a journey to Florida, they end up being in a bar. This is what happens to many people. So this is why we want to have an idea. Now, another important thing. Why having an ideal? What is an ideal? There's a good definition. If you Google it, it says it's a conception of something in its absolute perfection. When you say an ideal, right? For example, we have a scripture called Ramayana. In Ramayana, Rama is an ideal husband and Sita is an ideal wife, right? So, in fact, if you take this esoterically, Rama symbolizes the perfection of the self, and Sita represents the perfection of the intellectual or discursive thought and capacity to comprehend things and align with the higher self. So there's an esoteric principle there too. Or ideal is something that is a standard or model of perfection or excellence that you're trying to accomplish, right? Or it could be also considered to be a goal, but we'll leave that out. So why having an ideal? Simple words. Every life follows its ideal. You know, every life is colored by an ideal. Not just that, if you have an ideal, your life takes on its character. So your life becomes like your ideal. And you can actually read a person's character if you know his or her ideal. In fact, the reason being is that the ideal always dominates a person's life and their conduct in a way that they can't even hide it. You know, listen, just watch a person who loves music, right? So they cannot hide their joy when they hear good music, or whatever it is, maybe jazz in Chicago where Annapurna lives nicely, or some Sufi music. If you're like really into some good music, I tell you, I know Chicago a little bit, like pequeño, very little, but this is the idea. So why do we need an ideal? I'm going to just brief this in the next maybe 5 minutes, and then the good news will come to an end. You can have a lovely dinner, hopefully. Not French fries. You have to keep this until tomorrow. So the reason being is that our nature, human nature, by itself is pretty complacent. It's kind of mechanical, right? It tends to it gets to become stale. It's sort of, yeah, I'm the same person today, tomorrow, like, with some minor changes. You find this many people in life are like that. They're like the same people yesterday, today. You can tell that they're going to be the same next day. Sometimes the members of our families are like this, sometimes friends that we know, you know. So that is not a high way of living. Like Swami Shivananda says, you know, first of all, he says, it is better to aim at the lion and miss it than aim at the jackal and catch it. So it's like a bit of a hunting kind of a story, but if we think of it, it's better to aim at something higher and maybe not realize it. Because you will realize it, if not now, later on, if not in this lifetime, in next lifetime. Then to just kind of live like, slowly, ordinary life, same kind of thing. It's like when a guy, when he walks into a bar and the waiter already knows, or the barman, I don't know the specific names, duty names, but they already know what drink he wants or she wants. You see? So they like push it like in the movies, like that's he didn't even say the drink that's coming. Or a Groundhog Day, wake up in the morning, say no. So here, a spiritual student, like all of us, we're in a very peculiar situation. We are kind of suspended in between the two worlds. We're neither here nor there. So you can't go back into the world which you left, because it's not going to be a good thing. And you haven't reached really that high that you really want to say, oh, I've been there, I know what he's talking about, or whatever. So this is the nature being a little complacent, a little mechanical, does not yield easily to any transformative process. You can read the books, self-help books, any books you like. Still, the nature is so mechanical, so dense, right? Slow to change. And until something bangs it, then it doesn't change, right? The mind is extremely stubborn. But when do you really change the most and the best? When you're fired up by something like love or great faith, or you become an enthusiastic person about something, you're full of inspiration, right? So that is what fires you up. If people, when the people become alive, I've seen people in my life, even in ashrams, they're like, they get a little mechanical, boring, everything. They only get fired up if you tell them, you are going to lead the satsang tonight. You're going to be teaching the main lecture in the teacher training course. Then their eyes like boom, come up like this. Or for some other people, when they fall in love. And this is not to say that the love is any less spiritual than the other things, but it's to say that that's when we feel fired up. Why? Because all of a sudden, some new energy buzzes inside and we're happy. We want to change. Some people, when they fall in love with somebody, they're ready to change. They say, I won't drink anymore. I'm not going to say bad things anymore because you mean so much to me. Meaning that that person has become some form of a transformational influence in their life. And if you meet a spiritual teacher, is exactly like that. So there are different ways how you can get fired up. And it's important that you get fired up now in the midst of this crisis and this protest and everything. This is the time to fire up. Not to fire up when everything is in abundance, everything's flowing like in heavens here and there. There's nothing to be fired up there. You need the difficulties and challenges to also fire yourself up, or some form of love to find in your heart. So an ideal is like that. It's a beacon light. It's a tool of transformation. Sorry, it's a tool of transformation for our character. And when you have a plan, when you have an idea, you get power from within. It's like you release these invisible forces of energy and all kinds of other entities, and all of your subconscious mind becomes available to you with its powers. It stands at your disposal, and it helps you to achieve your ideals, whatever they may be. So this is the idea. We will stop here, and we're going to continue next time, because I think I will probably go on until midnight just to introduce this subject. And I hope it's been enough. If you have any questions, please just write whatever. If you don't hear from me, it's not that I don't pay attention to you. It means I just got a little bit overwhelmed with other things. And this is, and when I get